Okay, guys, here it is. Let me get rid of this thing. Okay, it's the Dr. Jason West live program. I'm so excited to share with you something that happens all of the time. And what is it? It's people being fatigued. And when I started this project, like I knew that there was going to be a lot of people that needed to hear this. And I've put a ton of work into it. I'm so excited to share. Like it's going to be one of our best master classes, and there's tons and tons of resources available for you. And it's just pure like information. And again, one of the motivations behind doing these master classes, I mean, they take so much work on putting these together, is because I'm frustrated with people not getting building blocks for their body to beat fatigue. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like the way that you help people is you get the body balanced, whether it's a digestive problem, whether it's a vitamin insufficiency, a mineral problem, like all of these things that it could be. Like you got to get it balanced. And the most frustrating comment I hear in the office is, I wish I would have found you, Dr. West, or someone like you. And there's guys that are doing this. Like I'm not the only one doing this. Like I think, no one wants to see an arrogant, egotistical doctor, but no one wants to go see someone that doesn't know what they're doing. And it's frustrating. And so I'm like, I got to do something about this. So that was the deal behind the masterclass process, is to help people. And so I've created this phenomenal book, an ebook. There's not a lot of graphics in it this time. So it's just pure information. And it's a conversation that I literally have every single day about what we can do for people that are tired. It's the most common reason why people come into like the office. They might come in for pain. They might come in for a shoulder problem, or their stomach's upset, or they have headaches. And then when you ask them, is there anything else I'm supposed to know? You know what they always tell you? Well, doc, I'm tired. Like it's so, and it's, there's so many reasons why that is. So we're going to dive into it. So I usually like to create, these graphic overlays and these PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. I'm just going straight off the book. So if you don't have a book, like, let me help you and tell you where to get this book. Now, it's going to look a little bit weird when I put it up because of the green screen, but it's something that our teams put together, and it gives you like the 7 biggest reasons of why we're having problems. Okay. And why it's such a difficulty with getting the answers, because so many times people are like, well, I have chronic fatigue syndrome? And people will like roll their eyes and say, well, that's not a real diagnosis. And so many healthcare providers look people in the eyes and say, they roll their eyes and say, like, I don't believe in it. Like it's some religion or something. It's not a religion. What it happens is when healthcare providers don't know how to do a workup or work with people, what happens is they get a garbage pail diagnosis. And so that's one of the observations of the last 21 years of how to help people. And anyway, here's the resource. So with that being said, I got to do a couple sponsors really quick. One of them, of course, is where I work. And I just always wanted to give a shout out to my team. So where do I work? I work at the West Clinic in Pocatello, Idaho. We treat people from literally every continent except Antarctica. Like someone called me out, some smart aleck called me out on the table this week about it. All 50 states, we help people across the streets, across the country. And my team is incredible. They make the podcast happen. So a special shout out to Susie and to Misty and Tori and Jody and my assistant Gina and the other amazing assistant Cora and Mariah and our financial a magician, which is Carla and Tasia, and then of course the provider. So I wanted to give a big shout out to the team that makes it happen and literally changes people's lives every day. That's the first one. The second one is my sponsor, OTC. So this is one of their products. This is probably my favorite product. It is the Liposomal Vitamin C. Personalized OTC stands for personalized organs, tissues, and cells, and they're the ones that help make it happen, and so that we can do the program. Now, that being said, we have so much stuff to go over, and a lot of times people say, well, Dr. West, like, what can I do outside of the office? And this is one of the things where I can kind of point you in the direction, but chronic fatigue syndrome, there's a lot of causes, and the value in what I can give you is to help point in the right direction, especially if you have access to your blood tests. I just want to show you a couple things that nearly all healthcare providers miss. But here's how you get to the book. Okay. And I have to go over one other. Well, let me just go get the book. Here we go. So if you go to drjasonwest.live, it's right here. This is what it looks like. This is how you access the free book. And again, it's just a resource guide for you, but it's phenomenal. Like I put years in developing this little ebook so that I can help people to beat chronic fatigue. Like there's a way to do it. And it's not just me saying it. Matter of fact, on our blog, and by the way, when I look this way or that way, I'm bringing in an overlay. On our blog this week, like you could meet Shauna, and Shauna beat Epstein Barr and fatigue symptoms. It's a really nice patient success story. There's and I've got hundreds, almost 1,000, like it's 990 something patient success stories, but it's over here on the West Clinic blog, and you can also see it when you go get your free book. So you head over to drjasonwest.live, you put your information in, and guess what? Here's what happens is this screen comes up. And so as soon as we get done with this, I will put this up for the replay. It's right here, the chronic fatigue. Also on the right, there's also a patient success story. And we've got just every single week, we bring someone in and we have them tell their story, because when you balance people, like you can change their life. And it's about emotional balance. It's about stress relief. It's about getting good nutrients into your system. It's minerals. And I think where the real important thing that comes for chronic fatigue is looking at this common blood test that all these providers are missing. And the answer is right there. Like the biggest cause of chronic fatigue. I'm going to show it to you inside of the book. Okay, then the next thing is once you register and you get your book, you guys, I'm so excited to share it. Like there's these past success stories and live casts and stuff that we put together. Every Wednesday night, we teach a class. And then if you're part of our inner circle, what we call the Thrivers program, we go into the specific question and answer period where I give it's a way that you can work closer with me on that. And then you click on, the video archives button. And anyway, so all of our past master classes, like it's over 100 on the different things on chronic headaches and what to do with the toxic thyroid and how to help arthritis and what to do with arthritis and what to do with a viral infection. And tonight inside of our Thrivers program, we're diving into COVID long haul, how to really get the thymus activated. And every week we do this special virtual office visit. And if you want information about that, like I just got to do a quick shout out, right? Whoops, it's right here. If you want information of how to work closer with me, there is, let me clean this up just a little bit. There is a way to do that. It's just send us an email, info@westcliniconline.com. It's an amazing program where I get a virtual office visit every week. I get on Zoom with everybody, answer questions for them, their inner circle. They get a customized supplement program. And anyway, but let's jump back into this report. So you get the report over here, and I'm going to go over that. And this is something that I talk about every day. I'm so excited to share some things with you. So let's just dive right in. I'm really going to follow the book. If you don't have the book, like you can get a copy of it. I'm going to pull this up right here, and I'm going to show people. All right, here it is. And it's a little PDF booklet, and away we go. So let's do this, you guys. So chronic fatigue syndrome, and matter of fact, there's a new name for it now. It's called myalgic encephalitis. So the muscles hurt, the brain's inflamed, people, go to bed and they wake up and they're not any refreshed. And I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome at 19 years old. I was in my second year of college, and I got an Epstein Barr infection. My lymph nodes swelled up so much in my throat that I couldn't even breathe. And I went to the emergency room. They said, your Epstein Barr virus is off the charts. This is what causes mononucleosis. And their medical treatment in 1990 was, well, you should go to bed for a year. And luckily my dad was a really gifted healer. And he's like, no, we have a different way to do that. I'm sharing inside of the report. I'm sharing with you like his protocol this is what you can do in a non-invasive approach for Epstein Barr. Now, it takes a while to do this approach. Like it's not an IV approach. It's not a neural therapy approach or there's so many more options, but I beat it. I haven't had chronic fatigue since then. Now, that Epstein Barr virus, it's a nasty little bugger, and we think 100% of the population has it. It affects some people horribly. It affects other people are totally asymptomatic, but like it's kind of in everybody. And the reason why some people have it and some people don't is because of the immune system. So like, that's one thing that we're going to be talking about is the immune system is sluggish. And what do you do to turn on the immune system? Well, it's really the thymus and the spleen. And those are the most neglected organs in medicine. So we're going to talk about like, how do you nutritionally support those and how you can energetically support those. Okay. So in the book, so let's go over to my little flip book here and let's clean this up a little bit. In the book, we talk about, some facts that are important. Chronic fatigue syndrome is not all in your head. Like, this is one of the most frustrating things. And the other frustrating thing is when healthcare providers like, well, you're just depressed, so let's give you a happy pill and let's give you, and they start working on this regimen and it's not correcting things. Like, it's not a depression thing, which, by the way, the reason why people get depressed with chronic fatigue is they feel horrible. And so then it hammers your emotions. If your emotions are healthy, what happens is it helps your physical body to be better. And then if your physical body better, it helps your emotions. Like, it's this balance thing that we keep talking about, but it's not just a depression thing. Like, there's so many things that are a part of chronic fatigue. So my experience is it's not just in your head. And, some of the classic signs of chronic fatigue syndrome is this. And inside the book, sleep disturbances, muscles and joint pain, headaches, memory problems, brain fog. And one of the classic signs of this brain fog thing is the lack of the red blood cells getting oxygen and nutrients to the brain and to the system. Okay. So if we can improve the cells, then you can make a difference. And so many doctors, like, they don't look at cells. They look at the big picture. Oh, it's your muscle system or it's your thyroid gland. Yeah, you're a little bit dragging. So let's give you, something to do with your thyroid gland. But it's not the thyroid gland that is the biggest cause of chronic fatigue. It's the thymus gland, which is this little gland that sits right behind the manubrium, which is Latin for the breastplate. It's a breastplate of the body. There's this gland that's so important for white blood cells to differentiate and turn on the immune system. And not only is it just for mononucleosis and Epstein Barr, it's for like viruses everywhere, right? All kinds of the flu, the cytomegalovirus virus, the Epstein Barr virus, this cold sore virus, the shingles virus. Like, that's the neglected gland. And there's a specific natural nutritional therapy. It's called Glandular Medicine, where you can take an extract of cattle thymus and it gives the DNA blueprint. Like, it helps the gland to be healthier. They call it protomorphogen therapy. It's not a prescription therapy. And it's so good because it just helps the thymus gland to work. Like, it's nearly impossible. I've never had a person like overdose on this thymus therapy. So it's something that we've used in the office since 1930 to get the immune system to turn on. I'm going to show you a way to get that in just a minute. But the other things that are like with the thymus gland, and I'm on page 2, with chronic fatigue, I'm on page 2 of this free ebook that I've written. Let me see if I can blow it up here just a little bit and make it so that it, okay, it's not going to let me blow it up, but right behind me, here's what it says. It's not clear what causes chronic fatigue, but I believe it's a combination of things. So the number one thing, it's a lack of cellular energy. And we're going to talk about how to get energy into the cells. That's using a vitamin C and a magnesium approach. It's the breakdown of the immune system. Like, when your immune system is like this, it's like we have guard dogs at our house. And so the robber breaks in to get the guard dogs, the guard dogs are supposed to chase off the robber. And what happens with chronic fatigue so many times is the white blood cells accept the antigens or the bad guys that most of the time, like it's a virus or some type of infection. Sometimes it can be a parasite problem, and they accept it as normal, right? So the antigen comes in, the virus comes in, it's infecting cells, and the guard dogs are literally, it's like they're telling the robber, hey, no, nothing here. They're not barking, they're not chasing. The jewels are over there. Take the TVs over there. There's a gun safe over there that you can take, anything. Anyway, so what happens is if we can wake up that immune system and get it to turn on and recognize the viral thing. Now what happens is the body goes through this cleansing mechanism, and you see people get their mojo back. And so it's not that the immune system isn't working. Like people say, well, how come my immune system shut off? Well, it's not that simple, because if the immune system was completely shut off, you would be dead, right? We call that acquired immune deficiency syndrome, right? Where it's not working. It's not that, it's just not working as effectively as possible. So and then the next thing, and I'm going to show you, like if you have a routine blood test, you can totally find out what's happening with your viral infections. And it's really this simple. You do a complete blood cell count, which nearly everybody does. You look at the white blood cell count. It should be 6 to 8. That's the ideal levels for a white blood cell count. And then with the auto differentiation means it looks at the breakdown of the white blood cells. There's 5 of them, right? There's the neutrophils, there's the lymphocytes, the monocytes, the eosinophils, and the basophils. Now this is on page 3 of the book. So if I'm going really fast, it's because I get excited about it, because someone out there is going to listen to this and it's going to help them. And it's what we do inside of the office. Like it's so common to see this. So you look at that percentage, and it should be 60, 38, 30. So 60% bacterial fighters, 30% viral fighters, 8% monocytes, which are your garbage or your that manages your inflammation. Eosinophils is also inflammation, allergies, parasites, and then basophils is again part of this system where the body like vasodilates. It's trying to get the immune system placed. That's what basophils do. And so you look at this percentage. Well, so many times what happens is the white blood cell count stays normal and the lymphocyte or the viral titer comes up. So what that means is there's a virus in your system that the body's not responding to. It just doesn't recognize it. It hides from, and it's the biggest energy sucker out there. It's like someone plugged an extension cord into your body and sucked all of your mojo out. And this is why people can go to sleep and then on the weekends they're like, hey, I'm going to, really catch up on myself. I'm going to get 8 or 10 hours. And what happens? They sleep and then they get up and they're like, I'm still tired. And that's because it takes so much energy for that immune system that's not working right. And it just sucks energy. So that's, I think, the most common one. And again, there's a paper from the British Journal of Medical Practitioners I think is so important. It's a resource guide, and I give this out all the time, that says that chronic viral infections, Epstein Barr, cytomegalovirus, herpes 1, 6, 7, what they do is they cause neurobehavior, neurodegenerative, psychiatric, autoimmune, fatiguing illness. Like I think this is one of the biggest causes of chronic fatigue. Now, the other thing that happens is the hormones are off, and mainly the pituitary gland, which is this gland that sits right in between your eyes and in between your ears. And it's like the master gland that tells everybody what to do. It tells the adrenals what to do. It tells the pituitary what to do. It has amazing impact on the hypothalamus. And basically, so if you go outside and you see a bear or a snake or a tarantula, what happens is your sympathetic nervous system should turn on, like and we should apply the gas. So the body gets energy, the breathing goes up, the pupils constrict. Like, okay, do we fight this thing or do we run away for another day? Well, you know what happens in 2021 is the body can't differentiate between a bear, a tarantula, or political news, or relationship stress, or neighbor stress, or work stress, or like all it interprets is stress. And these chronic stress patterns, like it decreases the pituitary gland effect and the hypothalamus and the adrenal glands, this HPA axis that we talk about. Like all of this is supposed to be this wonderful triangle that's in concert. And what happens is it doesn't work. And so the growth hormone and the thyroid stimulating hormone that comes from the pituitary gland, like it's not in concert with the rest of the body, and the adrenal glands wear out and people are like exhausted all the time. Matter of fact, one of the easiest ways to test for this is to take people's blood pressure lying down. It should be 120/80, pulse rate ideally 60 to 80. And then we have them stand up and we measure their blood pressure and their pulse rate. And what should happen is that the systolic and diastolic pressure should go up just a little bit. Your pulse rate should stay the same. And it's so unusual when that happens because people are chronically stressed and wears out their hormone system. And the way to help that is to put hormone building blocks back into the body, help, adrenal extract, help giving zinc into the body, helping the pituitary work, helping the thymus work. If you get those things working, now the body has a chance to manage the stress, and stress is not a disease. It just makes everything worse, right? And so it makes the fatigue worse. So that's why every time we have it live, we talk about the importance of having a stress outlet, whether it's gardening or going on a drive or playing a musical instrument or journaling or talking to yourself or meditation or prayer. There's all these different things that work for different people. So you find your thing to have stress outlet, and that's good to have a release. Like I told you about the car with the gas and the brake over here. What happens is the parasympathetic nervous system's got to come on and it's got to slow down this big fight or flight response, which is really impairing the immune system. Okay, low vitamin D levels are a big thing. Like it would be easier to write a story about vitamin D, what it doesn't do, than what it does do. It's more than a vitamin. It's a hormone. It's an essential nutrient. It helps your bones. Matter of fact, I just read a study that vitamin D levels are important for your immune system. And the study showed that there was a statistical decrease in the cancer character of the people that were in the control group. Like it was a 17% decrease in the circulating cells that have uncontrolled growth, which we call the big C. So it's not that it completely eliminates it, but it's a huge risk factor reducer for uncontrolled growth. And then the miracle, I think this is the most important mineral for chronic fatigue. It's so inexpensive and so cheap. It's magnesium. And so it's the miracle mineral. It's a cofactor in 300 enzymatic reactions. We are getting ready. I'm going to have to do a part 2 on chronic fatigue because I'm just getting warmed up. I'm all excited about it. I'm in the zone. I want to help people with it. And we're almost out of time. I mean, I try and do these for 30 minutes. And so I've got to come up with some additional information on chronic fatigue. But right behind that is my next stated masterclass was on fibromyalgia. And what is the magic for fibromyalgia? Well, it's magnesium. Like it's not a cure-all for magnesium. Like if you have fibromyalgia, you just start taking it. Like it's not, in my experience, it doesn't solve everything, but it really moves the needle. So magnesium and miracle mineral. And then the last one is you got to be aware of fats. Not only do most people not get enough fats, sometimes people don't absorb fats because their liver system isn't creating bile. Now, why would you think that chronic fatigue has to do with fat and fat metabolism? And here's why. If you help the cells, if you get the cells healthy, then the organs and the tissues and the systems and everything like that, they get better. And what is the key component of having healthy cells is this phospholipid bilayer, like this protective layer that's made up of healthy fats. And literally, it's like a skin that goes around each cell. Well, if you have the wrong kind of fats, that's bad. If you have trans fats and French fry fats and fats that are solid at room temperature, like that's really, the wrong fats. But the healthy fats of the omega-3s and 6s and 7s and 9 in the right ratio, what it does is it protects the cells. So then when we come back to chronic fatigue, what occurs is the viruses and the intracellular parasites, excuse me, and the susceptibility of the body, like it's improved when the cell membrane or that phospholipid bilayer is healthier. And so if you're taking fats and you're not like feeling very good, if you have chronic fatigue, then the next thing we need to do is look at, are we getting enough bile into the system? Is the fats come down the GI system? Excuse me. Is it being emulsified and breaking down? We have a free report that's in our podcast called Do You Have Enough Dietary Dish Soap, which is the bile that breaks down the dietary fat so that you can use it. So when I look at my report, so I covered page 2, and now I'm on page 3, and I talk about, you know, the white blood cell tests and the counts. And there's a little chart on page 3 that says, you know, if you have an increased white blood cell count, increased neutrophil count, neutrophils are the bacterial fighters. We've got a staph infection, we've got a strep infection, E. coli, pseudomonas, something like that that's occurring, and that's outside of the cell medicine, right? That's a different part of the immune system. When you have an increased viral count, which is your lymphocyte count, we know that there's something going on inside the cell, which is what they call cell-mediated immunity, and that's the thymus gland, that wonderful little gland in here that everybody forgets about and no one talks about because there's not really a prescription for the thymus gland. And so there's a way to help with the thymus gland, which is the proteomorphogen therapy. Okay, so that's page 3. Okay, page 4. Let me just get over here, making sure I didn't forget anything. All right. Okay, we went a little bit over that. Okay, the next thing is looking at your hormones. And so I'm going to jump into my little flip book here. Okay, is if you get the hormones in the right pathway. So looking at, you know, your testosterone levels, estrogen levels, progesterone levels, cortisol levels. There's some take-home tests, or there's some tests that I can help you with outside of the office. If you don't know what the hormones are, if you haven't had a hormone test, like either work with me or someone like me that can help you to get an understanding of what's happening with the hormones, because hormones, everybody thinks it's related to sex drive and libido and everything else. That's only a small part of it. Like if you had a huge book, like if this is the book on hormones, like this is your sex hormones, this is everything else: heart hormones, muscle hormones, kidney hormones, brain hormones, like this. So many times people think, well, why are you testing my hormones? Like either I'm not sexually active, or my libido, like it's gone and it's never coming back, or it's too high or it's too low, like all of these different things. Well, that's just such a small slice of the picture. And so anyway, I prefer the salivary hormone test kits because when you do it that way, there's no transport molecules in the blood. I think it's the best way to evaluate hormones. And other doctors disagree, and then like, okay, we can still disagree, but this is how I like to help patients. And not only do I think it's effective, like I've got tons and tons of people that have helped that way. And so you look at different things that and probably the number one thing to help the hormones, again, is the vitamin D levels. This is why I think it's so important, and it's inexpensive to test for vitamin D levels. And at the very minimum, you got to be over 50. I think the ideal range is 80 to 100. And most patients that I test they're 17, they're 21. Like I saw one the other day that was 40. I'm like, I'm so happy. Like you're so much better than everybody else, and you're only 50% normal. Like you got to keep going with the vitamin D levels. The other thing is making sure that you have the right kind of fats, because when you have the fats, not only does it protect the cells, it protects the nerves, like it insulates them. So that with these nerve conditions that frequently go along with chronic fatigue, such as restless leg syndrome and brain fog and inability to concentrate. And then when people run out of energy right away, like sometimes people with chronic fatigue, they kind of get to the point where they have, you know, a good day. And then what happens when they have a good day? The same thing that happens with almost all of us is, well, I got to make up for bad days. And so what happens is like, I got to go clean my house. I got to go work on this project, or I've got to get caught up on work. And so what occurs is they overdo it. So those are kind of the things to start. Now, when people say, well, what is the magic formula? There isn't one. And I think anybody that tells you that they have a magic formula, like it's misleading for people, because there's no such thing as the chronic fatigue program. There's a chronic fatigue program for Misty, and there's one for Tasia, and there's one for Shelby, and there's one for Scott, and there's one for Jason, and there's one for Maxine. And I can go on with all these different names, because if it's the thymus gland, you move that way. If it's the hormones, you get the hormones balanced. If it's a nerve problem where we have this nerve memory where, you know, death is here and health is here, like this is where we all want to live. But so many times our nervous system gets a memory And it's like, well, this is the way that it is. It's kind of like phantom limb syndrome or phantom gallbladder syndrome or post-traumatic neuralgia, where we get the nervous system like totally revved up and then it never never lets off. So in the case of a phantom limb syndrome, like someone will get their finger pulled off in a cow roping accident or something, they'll walk in, they'll be like, Dr. West, my finger's killing me. It's not even attached to their body because we've injured the nerve, and the nerve's telling the brain, I hurt, I hurt, I hurt, I hurt. Well, guess what? That can happen with your immune system, and it can happen with your hormones, and it can happen with, there's so many different things where the body gets stuck, and it's stuck down here. And so if your body was a computer and we called up tech support would say, restart everything. And that's the neural therapy thing that we talk about. Every single patient success story is that German treatment where you reset the nerve. So the first part of our chronic fatigue series is just kind of the workup phase. And I recognize, like, I got started on this project. I'm like, I can't even put everything in, but we got started on the blood test component. I think that's the number one thing to look at is your lymphocyte count. So your lymphocyte count should be 30. It's my opinion that if your lymphocyte count is over 36, like there is a bad dude in play. It's a flu virus, herpes simplex 1, 6, 7, cytomegalovirus, parvovirus, Epstein Barr virus, like something's in there. And we need to support the body to get rid of it, which is the thionine. Then I have a nice report up, and I did talk about it because we're already out of time, but it's the spleen. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about some really nice things that can help. So really quick, one of the best things that you can do is help your lymphatic system, which one of it is movement. And a lot of times people with chronic fatigue, they can't move because they're so tired. So that's hard. But one of the things that I've talked about in previous sessions about Lyme disease and about chronic infection and stuff like that is the benefit of potassium and hydrochloric acid, how it helps to clean out the lymph nodes. There's a really good article in our program called 3 Years of Hydrochloric Acid Therapy, where they talk about how potassium and hydrochloric acid, either with IV or nutritional methods, helps to change the ion structure in lymph nodes, which are the jails of the body. So the white blood cell comes along, it attacks the bad guy, it takes them to the jail, which is your lymph nodes, right? And so if your lymph nodes are swollen up, which is a common thing where people will be like, yeah, I got all this junk here, or I can feel it in my armpit. Sometimes it's a lot less common. They feel it in their groin. It's because the lymph nodes are the jails are overwhelmed. So, and by the way, I need to say this, like, don't supplement with potassium without some blood tests. And it's part of your metabolic panel. It's not expensive to find out what it is, but too much potassium is really bad for your heart. Too little is really bad. So it has to be balanced. So you need to have a workup with someone who understands how to look at the tests, but almost everybody has that test. If you have an annual health fair or anything, like that's tests that they're going to have in there that you can look at. Now, for me, I think the ideal levels for potassium is around 4.2. I think that's a really good place to be. And then when you add, a digestive enzyme, you can add some hydrochloric acid. Like it helps to clean out the jails of the body. Now that's, again, you got to be working with someone that knows what's happening. The other thing, a shout out to my friend Jane, and there's a company called Barlow Herbal that has this wonderful product called Lomatium Dissected. It's a wild crafted Native American herb that I think is so good as a herbal stimulant for the body. And it's a product called LDM 100. So let me walk you over and get some help here. So a couple things. There's not really a protocol for chronic fatigue that I could put together in a box and give it to you. Like that would be a disservice to you. And people that say they have a chronic fatigue box, like I know they're trying, but I don't think that's fair to the patient. Like you got to do some work on there. But that being said, there are a couple things that are good for the immune system. And this is what my dad gave me when I had Epstein Barr and it got into my lymph nodes and I swelled up like a bullfrog and I could barely even function, is one of my favorite medicines of all time. And I see really good outcomes with this. It's a herbal tincture and it tastes not so good. So I just want to like give people warning, like now you'll understand why bugs don't like it, but here's what it looks like. And this is called LDM 100. And it's one place to start if you can't work with anybody. So if you just did the LDM 100 and some magnesium and vitamin D, I think it's like would start. But I don't think it's reasonable to not have a healthcare provider involved that's looking at the hormones and the GI system and your bowels and like all of this stuff. Like the way to help chronic fatigue is like you got to look at the whole entire system. And one of the problems that we have in healthcare is you almost have to be a doctor to know which doctor to see. You know, if it's above the diaphragm, you see an internal medicine. If it's below, you see a gastroenterologist. If it's a kidney problem, you see a nephrologist. And if it's a liver problem, you see, you know, a liver specialist. And if it's a joint problem, you see rheumatologist. Like stop. From a chronic fatigue, you have to look at the entire body, stress, hormones, GI system, stomach. You have to balance the biochemistry, the biomechanics, the energy, and then you can't forget the mind-body connection, which is being able to like yourself and to be able to there's such an important component. When I first started practice, I feel horrible about this. I used to think, oh, that's all wacky woo voodoo stuff. It's just about like, you know, straight up, you know, if I can't cut it out or look at it or do something with biomechanics, like it doesn't exist. And I wasn't as good a doctor as I could be before I started understanding the biology of belief and the molecules of emotion and like all of these things of how it affects you. So with that being said, our program tonight is just the initial phases of chronic fatigue syndrome and what we can do to get started. So if you're out there, you're, you know, across the country, you're on our YouTube channel, you're like, what do I do? Okay, here's what I would recommend that you do first. Number one is we got to get current blood tests. Anything over the last 6 months is a good place to start. It's so easy to get a metabolic panel and a complete blood cell count. It's almost always in an insurance exam. It's in your yearly exam. Like almost every doctor does that test, and it's in the beauty is in the interpretation. So with that being said, like that's a good place to start. Having looking at your diet and just, you know, are you eating healthy, clean, and alive foods? The healthier and more alive your food is, the healthier and alive you're going to be. So that is a component. And then start looking at, okay, is there a virus in play? Is it a hormone component? Is it the inability to break down fats and protect the nerves and protect the cells? And in my experience with chronic fatigue is it's usually a combination of all of them. Like it's not a one cause, one cure. That being said, if you need some help, whether it's a virtual office visit or in-office visit, like if you go to our website, you know, at the West Clinic or, you know, drjasonwest.live, which is all this stuff, you can just contact us about how we can help you virtually or inside of the office. Like there's so many people that we help long distance. It is a little easier to see the whites of your eyes and do the work. Like I won't say that it's exactly the same, but virtually I can help. And a lot of times what happens is I can design treatment protocols and stuff for people that can go to a local healthcare provider. And we can start getting some of these 106-year-old therapies that my great-grandfather taught my grandfather, my grandpa taught my dad, and my dad taught me. So if that is the case, what we need to do is let me just pop this. Okay. If you are looking for information and you need something, you can email us at info@West Clinic online. Like by now I've got a podcast on so many different things, and it's not that we've treated every single condition in the Merck's manual, but many times when people say, hey, I've been diagnosed with, you know, mast cell disease, I've been diagnosed with, you know, COVID long haul, I've been like a lot of times we have a patient success story associated with it. So if you're looking for a podcast or information, then, you know, send us an email on this. And anyway, so next week we got to do part 2 of the chronic fatigue series. Tomorrow we have a wonderful patient success story. His name's Jared, and Jared's going to tell you about trigeminal neuralgia and how he was diagnosed with this horrific pain over here. And I think I was doctor like 11 or something like that. And how this, like, that was years ago. And it was fun to catch up with him. So we're going to be showing Jared's story inside of the office tomorrow. We're getting ready to move over to the Thrivers program. The Thrivers is a way that people get to work one-on-one with me every single week, go over in questions and protocols. And, I design custom and programs for them. And we have a podcast system that they can download these special life hacks and treatments and stuff. If you want information about that, same thing. You can just send us an email at info@West Clinic Online. So that is our program. Chronic fatigue, part 1. Like, there's so much of this. And I thought I could do a really good job and cover it. And I just got started saying, oh my gosh, the way to help chronic fatigue is just the workup. Now, I know everybody wants like the magic sauce or whatever, like the workup is where it's at, because it tells you what to do. That's the clue. That tells you what you're doing. So you got to looking at all of those different things. So that's why I started with that. We're going to get into some advanced treatments and stuff next week. And then what we have scheduled after we get done with chronic fatigue is it's fibromyalgia. So I just wanted to give a shout out to my team and to my sponsors and everybody else for their impact and making it happen. And sometimes I wonder, does anybody listen to these? And every time I think that, what happens is someone hits me up at the store inside the office and says, wow, I learned a lot from that. And if it helps you to change the pathway that you're on, like everybody has a story, everybody has obstacles, and I'm convinced that if you knew people's story, like, it would make the world a better place. Because when we have misunderstand, like when we don't understand what people are going through, like, it's easier to judge, right? And it causes conflict and problems. So if we knew people's story, it would be a better place. And when at any given time, I believe that you can change your story. This is from one of my personal Facebook posts. And doing the workup and understanding what's happening with the immune system and the hormone system gives you the ability to rewrite your story. It's a Dr. Jason West program. I'll see you guys next week for more chronic fatigue. I'm heading over to my special Thrivers program. Tomorrow, you're going to see Jared's story. That's what's happened tonight. I sure enjoy helping people with chronic fatigue. And if I can help you, please reach out to the office or send us an email. I'm Dr. West. We'll see you guys next week.